Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2, the show where I read the Tanakh and provide my own interpretations of what I think it all means. This week's episode falls during the 22nd of February, 2025, 24th Shevat, 5785, Parashat Mishpatim. Continuing off of last week's episode, we are reading more of the book of Samuel, Shmuel, chapters 4 through 6. Those who wish to follow along in English can do so on Chabad.org. As always, I remind everybody I'm not a professional Tanakh or scripture scholar, just somebody who wanted to study the scripture. Let's go ahead and jump right on in. Shmuel chapter 4, verse 1. And the word of Samuel was fulfilled to all Israel, and Israel went out to war against the Philistines, and they encamped beside Ebenezer, and the Philistines encamped in Aphek. And the Philistines arrayed their troops against Israel, and the battle spread, and Israel was beaten before the Philistines. And they slew in the battle array in the field about 4,000 men. And the people came to the camp, and the elders of Israel said, Why has the Lord beaten us today before the Philistines? Let us take to us from Shiloh the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and he will come in our midst and save us from the hand of our enemies. And the people sent to Shiloh, and from there they carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who dwells above the cherubim. And there with the ark of the God's covenant were Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas. And it was when the ark of the Lord's covenant came into the camp that all Israel shouted a great shout, and the earth stirred. And the Philistines heard the sound of the shout, and they said, What is the sound of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews? And they knew that the ark of the Lord had come into the camp. And the Philistines feared, for they said, God has come into the camp. And they said, Woe is unto us, for there was nothing like this yesterday and before yesterday. Woe is unto us, who will save us from the hand of this mighty God? This is the God who smote the Egyptians with every sort of plague in the wilderness. Strengthen yourselves and become men, you Philistines, lest you serve the Hebrews as they served you, and you shall become men, and fight. And the Philistines waged war, and Israel was beaten, and they fled each man to his tents. Now the blow was very great, and there fell from Israel 30,000 infantrymen. And the ark of God was taken, and the sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, perished. And a man of Benjamin ran from the battle array and came to Shiloh on that day, with his garments torn and earth upon his head. And he came, and behold, Eli was sitting on the chair beside the road, anxiously waiting, for his heart trembled for the ark of God. And the man had come to tell in the city, and the whole city cried out. Now Eli heard the sound of the cry, and he said, What is this confused noise? And the man hurried and came and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were set, and he could not see. And the man said to Eli, I am the one who has come from the battle array, and I fled from the battle array today. And he said, What happened to my son? And the one who had reported the news answered and said, Israel fled before the Philistines, and also there was a great slaughter among the people. And also your two sons perished, Hophni and Phinehas, and the ark of God was taken. And it was when he mentioned the ark of God that Eli fell off the chair backward through the gate opening, and his neck broke, and he died, because the man was old and weighty, and he had judged Israel for 40 years. And his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was with child, ready to give birth. And she heard the news concerning the taking of the ark of God, and that her father-in-law and her husband had died. And she knelt and gave birth, for her pains had suddenly come upon her. And about the time of her dying, the women who were standing by her said, Do not fear, for you have borne a son. And she did not answer, neither did she heed. And she called the child Ichabod, saying, Glory has been exiled from Israel, because the ark of God has been taken, and because of her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, Glory has been exiled from Israel, for the ark of God has been taken. And so here we have the summary at the end of chapter 1. Let's go ahead and recap. So first off, we get affirmations. Previous chapters, we learned about Samuel's ability. Now we know that he is a fully ordained prophet. The words that he speaks always come true. So nevertheless, it now says that Israel goes to war against the Philistines, camping out by Ebenezer. The battle is fierce. The Israelites are slain by about 4,000 men, and they say, Hey, elders of Israel, why did God let us lose? why don't we go take the Ark of the Covenant into battle, and then we'll have God on our side, and that way we can actually defeat those guys. So they go and they take the Ark, along with the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. And as we recall from last time, there was a prophecy. God told Samuel that they would be put to death. They would be killed on the same day. And so when they get the Ark at the camp, everybody's like, yeah! They're cheering because as far as they're concerned, they're quite confident that they've now just secured their victory. And the Philistines overhear this and they go, what's all that racket? Oh no. Literally, oh God, no. They're afraid because they realize the God of Israel is now among them. They have the Ark of the Covenant. And they basically say, this is bad. This is the same God that defeated Egypt. We are in trouble. But nevertheless, they say, steel yourselves, strengthen yourselves, be men, and basically be as men and fight so that you don't become enslaved. And so the Philistines go to war and they actually win. Israel is beaten and 30,000 soldiers are defeated. And so now they take the Ark of the Covenant, Ark of God, with them as booty, and also the two sons of Eli are killed as fulfilling the prophecy. Now a Benjamite who was among the army manages to get away, and it says that his garments were torn and he had earth upon his head. So we can look at this as basically meaning like he was covered in dirt and his clothing was ripped because I don't think he did it because he was ashamed. I think this is him barely escaping from the battle with his life. So he makes it and he says, Eli, I've got some terrible news because the people in the city are now aware of what's going on. And it also says that Eli is waiting on the chariot by the roadside, anxiously waiting, trembling for the Ark of God, right? Because in other words, they've just given up the most sacred artifact that the entire people have for this battle. He's terrified, like, what if it doesn't come back? Sure enough, this man comes and he tells him the bad news. He says, your sons have died and the Ark of the Covenant has been taken. Now, it's not the sons dying that gets Eli. It's the Ark being taken. That is what got him. This causes him to be so taken aback that he flips back in his chair and crashes through the gate and dies on the spot, breaks his neck. It says he was old at 98 years old and he was a bit heavy, so he broke his neck then and there. Now, we also hear that his daughter-in-law, who is the wife of Phinehas, or Pinchas, she's got a baby and she's ready to give birth, and then suddenly she hears that the Ark has been taken and it puts her immediately into labor, and she, right then and there, she gives birth and has her child. And it says about the time of her dying, so we infer that the mother as well also dies. She has the baby. They say, do not fear, for you have borne a son, but she says nothing, nor does she heed the words. In other words, like, it's over for her. She's already gone. And so they say the child is called Ichabod. Gloria has been exiled from Israel because the Ark of God has been taken, because her father-in-law and her husband. But then it further elaborates, no, it's because of the Ark of God being taken. So this is very bad for the people all over Israel. And now we're going to jump right into chapter 5. But I do want to note one last thing. It is rather significant that he's not really concerned about his sons so much as the covenant, or the Ark of God. Like, that's really the big item here. Now, also interestingly, Samuel is mentioned, but we get into this other stuff. This has got nothing to do with Samuel, right? So, other than the prophecy that Samuel had fulfilled up to this point. So, in other words, we know it's definitely coming true. And sure enough, the promised fulfillment has happened. Chapter 5, verse 1 of Samuel, book of Shmuel. Now the Philistines had taken the Ark of God and brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. And the Philistines took the Ark of God and brought it to the house of Dagon and set it up beside Dagon. And the Ashdodites arose early on the morrow. And behold, Dagon was falling face downward to the ground before the ark of the Lord, and they returned him to his place. And they arose early the next morning, and behold, Dagon was falling face downward to the ground before the ark of the Lord, and Dagon's head and the two palms of his hands were cut off, and lying on the threshold, only Dagon's trunk alone remained upon him. Therefore the priests of Dagon and all those who come to the house of Dagon do not tread upon the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod until this day. And the hand of the Lord became heavy upon the Ashdodites, and he ravaged them, and he smote them with hemorrhoids, Ashdod and its borders. And the people of Ashdod saw that it was so, and they said, Let not the ark of God of Israel dwell with us, for his hand is severe upon us, and upon Dagon our God. And they sent and gathered all the lords of the Philistines unto them, and they said, What shall we do to the ark of the God of Israel? And they said, "Let the ark of God of Israel be brought around to Gath." And thereupon they brought the ark of the God of Israel around to Gath. And it was after they had brought it around that the hand of the Lord was upon the city with great panic. And he smote the people of the city, both young and old, and hemorrhoids broke out in their hidden parts. And they sent away the ark of God to Ekron, and it was that when the ark of God came to Ekron, that the Ekronites cried out, saying, "They have brought around the ark of the God of Israel to kill me and my people." And they sent and gathered all the lords of the Philistines, and they said, "Send away the ark of the God of Israel, and let it return to its place, so that it will not kill me and my people." For there was a panic of death in the entire city. The hand of God was very heavy there. And the people who did not die were smitten with hemorrhoids, and the city's cries ascended to heaven. End of chapter 5. So here we have a case of the ark of God has been taken captive by these people. And they set it up next to their idol of Dagon, right? Their god, Dagon. And, I think Dagon was like a fish god thing, like its head was like a fish or something. Either way, this creature, this idol is set up, and they bring the ark of God next to it. The next morning, the idol of Dagon is now basically face forward on the ground. So it's like it's bowing before the ark of the Lord. And in response to this, they said, "Oh, put him back up." The next day it happens again, only this time his hands and his head are cut off. So not only does the statue's body fall, but also the hands and the head have been severed. They remain subservient before the God of Israel. Now, with that being said, this was so bad that the priests of Dagon and all those who worship him don't go anywhere near that in Ashdod to this day. Now, it says that the Ashdodites suffered pretty badly. He ravaged them and smote them with hemorrhoids, meaning that they both died and they were afflicted with hemorrhoids. And it's so, this is really bad. And they basically say, this thing that we've got here, we got to get rid of this because this is causing God to punish us. So they send it over and they talk to the lords and like, where are we going to put this thing? They say, hey, put it in Gath. Yeah, bring it over to the city of Gath. So they bring it to Gath. And sure enough, the same thing happens. Lots of people are being afflicted, and also they're getting hemorrhoids. And then they send it away to Ekron, and once again, the people of Ekron have the same experience. They say, "Get that thing away from me! Get it out of here!" And so they say, we need to send this thing back to Israel. We cannot have this, because now everybody's afraid that they're going to die and get hemorrhoids and so on. So, what is the case? Those who do survive do end up with really bad hemorrhoids, and it's so bad that their cries ascend to heaven. So, at the end of the day, what's the takeaway here? They were allowed to take the Ark of the Covenant, but there were consequences. And now it's directly afflicting all of the people in the cities that are adjacent to where this thing is being stored. So, even though the people of Israel are not there to protect it, this holy Ark is not simply sitting there without consequence. And they now know we got to get rid of this thing. Let's go ahead and move on to chapter 6, verse 1 of the book of Shmuel. And the ark of the Lord was in the field of the Philistines 7 months. And the Philistines called the priests and the diviners, saying, "What shall we do to the ark of the Lord? Let us know in what manner we shall send it to its place." And they said, "If you send the ark of God of Israel, do not send it away empty, but you shall send it back with a guilt offering. Then you will be cured, and it will be known to you why his hand would not turn away from you." And they said, "What is the guilt offering which we shall send back to him?" And they said, "The number of the lords of the Philistines, 5 hemorrhoids of gold and 5 mice of gold, for there is one plague for all of them and for your lords. And you shall make the images of your hemorrhoids and the images of your mice who destroy the land, and you shall give honor to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will lighten his hand from upon you, and from upon your God, and from upon your land. And why should you make your heart heavy as the Egyptians and Pharaoh made their hearts heavy? Will it not be just as he mocked them, and they sent them away, and they departed? And now take wood, and make 1 new cart, and take 2 milch cows upon which no yoke has ever come, and you shall hitch the cows to the cart, and return their young home from behind them. And you shall take the ark of the Lord, and you shall place it in the cart, and the golden objects which you have sent back to him as a guilt offering you shall place in the box at its side, and you shall send it away, and it will go. And you will see, if it goes up on the way on its own boundary, to Beth-Shemesh, he wrought upon us this great evil, and if not, then we shall know it was not his hand which touched us, it was an accident which befell us. And the men did so, and they took it upon 2 milch cows, and hitched them to the cart, and their young they shut up in the house. And they placed the ark of the Lord in the cart, and also the box and the golden mice, and the images of their hemorrhoids. And the cows went straight in the road on the way to Beth-Shemesh on one highway, lowing as they went, and they turned neither to the right nor to the left. And the lords of the Philistines were going along after them as far as the border of Beth-Shemesh. Now the inhabitants of Beth-Shemesh were reaping the wheat harvest in the valley, and they lifted up their eyes and saw the ark, and they rejoiced to see it. And the cart had come to the field of Joshua, the Beth-Shemeshite, and stood there, and there was a huge stone. And they split the wood, and the cows they offered up as burnt offering to the Lord. And the Levites took down the ark of the Lord, and the box which was with it, wherein were the golden objects, and they placed them on the huge stone. And the men of Beth-Shemesh offered up burnt offerings, and slaughtered sacrifices on that day to the Lord. And the 5 lords of the Philistines had seen, and they returned to Ekron on that day. And these were the golden hemorrhoids which the Philistines had set back as a guilt offering to the Lord, one for Ashdod, one for Gaza, one for Ashkelon, one for Gath, and one for Ekron. And the golden mice were according to the number of all the cities of the Philistines, which belonged to the 5 lords, from fortified city to open village, and even to the great stone upon which they had placed the ark of the Lord, which is until this day in the field of Joshua the Beth-Shemeshite. And he smote of the people of Beth-Shemesh, for they had gazed upon the ark of the Lord. And he smote of the people 70 men, 50,000 men, and the people mourned, for the Lord had struck a great blow upon the people. And the men of Beth-Shemesh said, Who will be able to stand before the ark of the Lord, this holy God? And to whom will it go up from us? And they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiriath-Yearim, saying, The Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to you. End of chapter 6. So here we have the resolution of the case of the stolen ark of God. So the Philistines, they've got it sitting in the wilderness for 7 months, and things are going very badly. Now, as we already know, they've been dealing a lot with hemorrhoids and death, but it also seems that there's more going on. So first, let's talk about the solution. They reach out to their local oracles, their diviners, their priests, and they say, what do we do about this thing? How do we get this thing out of here and send it back home? And they say, if you're going to do that, make sure you send it back with gifts, right? A guilt offering. Then, because you atone by giving the guilt offering, the God of Israel will spare you, and you will know exactly why this happened to you, and why he refused to spare you all this time. And they say, okay, well, we're going to give the guilt offering, but what is it? And he says, we're going to do 5 hemorrhoids and 5 mice made out of gold. So the hemorrhoid is your biggest affliction of the body, and also the 5 mice. Why mice? For there is one plague for all of them and for your lords. So what's been going on is that it seems there's been a plague of rats or mice that are probably ravaging the fields as well as attacking these poor people with their hemorrhoids. So this is the symbol of their affliction, right? The mice and the hemorrhoids. So make gold in the image of these things, put them so that we can acknowledge that this was a punishment from God. And sure enough, once you've made these images and give them in honor to the God of Israel, maybe he will show you mercy. And so he also says, why should you do like the Egyptians did? Why should you make your heart heavy? In other words, why should you make this worse for yourself when the outcome is going to be the same anyway? So go ahead, make yourself a nice wooden cart, get 2 milch cows upon which no yoke has ever come. And so it says, like, take their cows. All right, these are going to be like perfect cows, but also their babies are going to follow them. Turn their kids back home. All right, just let the cows wander. And you're going to put the ark of the Lord on the cart and simply let it walk back to Israel. And if it goes back to Israel without wandering away from the path, then that's going to mean that this was legitimately the work of God of Israel, because otherwise the cows would wander. But it's going to clearly be guided by them, or by God. So they do exactly as they're told. They place the cart, they place the gold, the offerings, all that stuff, and then they set the cows loose, and sure enough, the cows go exactly the way they're supposed to go. They realize, okay, yeah, it really was the God of Israel punishing us. Now we get over into Beth-Shemesh. The inhabitants of Beth-Shemesh are reaping the wheat harvest, right? They're doing their thing. They look up and, oh, wonderful, it's the Ark of God. Wow. So they see in the field of Joshua, the Beth-Shemeshite, and stands there. Right? Here's the cart. and there was a huge stone, right? They split the wood and the cows, they offered up as a burnt offering to the Lord, so very nice. The Levites take down the ark of the Lord and the box, which was with it, where the golden objects were. They place them on the stone. The men of Beth Shemesh offer burnt offerings and slaughter sacrifices. Wonderful. 5 lords of the Philistines see it. They go, okay, mission accomplished. They go home. And for Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gat, and Ekron, these were the 5 representative offerings. The mice were according to all the number of all the cities, so which belonged to the 5 lords, from fortified city to open village, and even to the great stone upon which they placed the ark of the Lord, right? So, and it says the stone that they placed it on is still there. Now, it then says that the people of Beth Shemesh were smitten because they looked upon the ark. Now remember, this is a warning that's passed down through the generations. Only the Kohen Gadol is supposed to be looking at this thing. And it says, he smote of the people 70 men, 50,000 men, and the people mourned, for the Lord had struck a great blow upon the people, right? So it said, of the people, 70 and 50,000, right? So I think it's 50,000 and 70 is the final number, if I'm reading that correctly. Now, with that being said, they're now sitting there going, oh, what are we going to do? This thing has caused us problems now. Who are we going to call? Who do we call to take care of this? So they call the people of Kiryat Yarim saying, hey, the Philistines brought it back. Come get this. All right, come pick this up, please. So that ends this week's episode. I guess just the general takeaway, the general note that's so interesting to me is that the Philistines have basically had their own private episode where they are dealing with the Ark of God, and it just is not a good time at all. It's a very bad time. So they eventually send it home on their own, and the Israelites of Beth Shemesh, they see this thing, and they're like, woohoo, this is great. Woo, everybody make offerings. This is wonderful. And then also they die because they looked at it, right? So it's like, you just can't win. This has been bad. This has been a pretty bad episode all around for pretty much every person involved. And, well, that's really the way it goes. I think it's an important reminder of the power of God, and also not to underestimate the danger of dealing with things pertaining to God when there are established precepts. Now, it doesn't say that the entirety of the people of the Philistines were slain, right? A lot of them did die, but most of them were suffering afflictions. But the people of Israel, they died. And I think this is because of the conditions of the covenant, right? So the Philistines don't have the same covenant, but by accepting the covenant of Israel and the Torah, these people are beholden to the rules, and therefore they are put to death by God for looking upon his holy ark. I think that is the significance and really the danger. Like, when you have taken the oath, you are bound to its rules. So what is not the rule for other people is the rule for you, and it means that there are going to be consequences. And that's it for this week's episode. We'll be tuning in next time to continue the book of Samuel. But until then, this concludes the story of the stolen or captured Ark of God, the death of the family of Eli, and, of course, the continuation of the book of Samuel. Until then, this has been Shmuel Moshe with the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2 saying, Baruch Hashem.